Welcome to Sheffield, one of the most important music cities in Britain. This industrial city gave the world heavy metal legends, synth-pop pioneers, indie rock icons, and one of the greatest voices in rock history, from Def Leppard to Arctic Monkeys. This is the sound of Sheffield. 1. Def Leppard. In the late 1970s, a group of teenagers from Sheffield started playing loud, aggressive rock music. Inspired by bands like Led Zeppelin and Thin Lizzy, they called themselves Def Leppard. At first, they were part of the new wave of British heavy metal, but over time, they transformed into one of the biggest rock bands in the world. Albums like Pyromania and Hysteria turned them into global superstars. And what makes their story remarkable is where they came from. Not Los Angeles, not New York, a cold industrial city in northern England. And somehow those Sheffield kids created some of the biggest rock anthems of the 1980s. 2. Arctic Monkeys. Then Sheffield gives us another revolution. In the early 2000s, Arctic Monkeys emerged with sharp lyrics, fast guitars, and stories about nightlife, boredom, and modern youth culture. Their debut album exploded across Britain. But what made them different was how real they sounded. Alex Turner didn't sing like a traditional rock star, he sounded like Sheffield itself. Their music captured ordinary life in northern England with honesty and attitude. And suddenly, one local band became one of the biggest indie rock acts in the world. 3. Pulp. Then comes one of the most uniquely British bands ever created. Pulp spent years underground before finally becoming famous during the Britpop era. But unlike many bands of the time, Jarvis Cocker wrote about ordinary people, awkwardness, class, desire, everyday life. Songs like Common People turned social observation into pop music. Pulp didn't try to sound American. They sounded unmistakably British, unmistakably Sheffield, intelligent, strange, funny, and emotional all at once. 4. The Human League. But Sheffield didn't only produce rock bands, it also helped change electronic music forever. The Human League emerged from the city's industrial atmosphere with synthesizers, machines, and futuristic ideas. At a time when guitars dominated popular music, they embraced electronics. And eventually, songs like Don't You Want Me became worldwide hits. Their success helped bring synth-pop into the mainstream and influenced generations of electronic artists after them. Suddenly, Sheffield sounded futuristic. 5. Cabaret Voltaire. And then things become darker. Cabaret Voltaire pushed experimentation even further. Their music mixed electronic noise, industrial sounds, tape manipulation, and political tension. Factories, technology, surveillance, urban anxiety, all of it became part of their sound. Listening to Cabaret Voltaire sometimes feels like hearing the industrial city itself. Harsh, mechanical, uncomfortable, but incredibly influential. 6. ABC. Now Sheffield changes direction once again. ABC brought sophistication, glamour, and style. With the lexicon of love, they mixed pop music with orchestral arrangements and polished production. It sounded elegant and dramatic, almost cinematic. Their music proved Sheffield could produce not only raw energy, but also refinement and sophistication. Another completely different sound from the same city. 7. Heaven 17. Born from former members of the Human League, Heaven 17 continued Sheffield's electronic evolution. But their music added more funk, politics, and emotion. Songs like Temptation combined emotional vocals with synthetic textures and dance rhythms. They represented a moment when electronic music stopped sounding cold and started sounding human. And once again, Sheffield was ahead of the curve. 8. Bring Me the Horizon. Now we jump to a newer generation. Bring Me the Horizon began as an extremely heavy metal band. Aggressive vocals, breakdowns, chaos. But over time, they evolved into something much broader. Electronic elements, pop structures, and atmospheric production transformed their sound completely. Their evolution mirrors Sheffield itself, constantly changing, never staying in one style for too long. 9. Moloko. And Sheffield keeps evolving. Moloko brought a completely different energy to the city's musical identity. Electronic music mixed with pop, dance, trip-hop, and the unmistakable voice of Roisin Murphy. Their sound felt stylish, playful, and modern, especially with songs like Sing It Back, which became an international hit. Once again, Sheffield proved it could reinvent itself. A different generation, a different sound, but the same creative spirit. Bonus, Sheffield's hidden 2000s scene. Even in the 2000s, Sheffield kept producing fascinating underground bands. Milburn captured everyday northern life with raw indie rock energy and became part of the same local explosion that surrounded Arctic Monkeys. At the same time, the Long Blondes brought sharp, stylish indie music with attitude and personality that felt completely British. And then there was 65 Days of Static, a band that mixed post-rock electronics and cinematic intensity into something futuristic and emotional. None of them became massive global acts, but together they show something important about Sheffield. This city never stopped creating new sounds. 10. Joe Cocker. And finally, one of the greatest voices ever to come out of Britain. Joe Cocker didn't need perfect technique or polished vocals. What made him unforgettable was emotion.
A little help from my friends. Remember us.
Born in Sheffield, his voice sounded raw, honest, and deeply human, especially in songs like With a Little Help from My Friends, where he transformed a Beatles song into something completely his own. He sang like someone who had lived every word, and in many ways he represents the spirit of Sheffield itself. Working class, unpolished, real, a voice full of soul from a city built on steel. From heavy metal anthems, to electronic pioneers, to indie rock classics, Sheffield became one of the most important music cities in Britain without ever behaving like one. Its artists created their own identities, their own accents, their own sounds, and maybe that's why their music still feels real. So, which Sheffield artist surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe for more journeys through the places that shaped music history.
This has been Music Itinerary.